In the final video in the series, we'll learn how to put a Mathew Walker knot in a 3-strand rope. I've included that in this series because in order to tie the Mathew Walker knot, we have to unwind the strands, and this has to be done before we do any back splicing. First, we'll practice tying the Mathew Walker knot with our cord and box arrangement. The foundation knot for the Mathew Walker knot is the wall knot tied with the lay or counterclockwise. So we'll tie tighten the wall knot about to that point so that our bites are relatively small but open enough to make further tucks. I've flattened the wall nut out for instructive purposes. You don't necessarily have to do this when we're tying the Mathew Walker knot. With the wall nut completed, the final step to make the Mathew Walker knot is to tuck each of our strands through the next bite in a counterclockwise direction on the inside of the previous cord. So this strand will go on the inside there, this one on the inside here, and this one on the inside here. And then all 3 strands, they come up at the center. And as when we were tightening the wall knot, we take the Mathew Walker knot and holding the 3 strands even, push down a little bit. And then the next step is to push the opposite direction. That'll capsize the Mathew Walker knot into position. But now we have to move the Mathew Walker knot down to where our seizing is on our rope. And to do that, we just slowly work each of the strands, pulling and then pushing the knot. It'll invert itself similar to when we were tightening the wall knot. Just make sure that we don't cause any of these strands to flip and cross one another as we're doing it. We can kind of tell things are going good if our strands are even. Then once we get it down to the seizing, then we can start to tighten the Mathew Walker knot up. We want our strands to be running parallel. Once we have the Mathew Walker knot tightened, we can then twist our rope back together. I'll retie that again, stopping at each stage so that you have a good impression of what the knot looks like at each of those stages. First we'll tie the wall knot. Well, of course we're tying this with the lay or counterclockwise. That's the walnut. Next we make our second tucks. And each tuck is on the inside of the previous strand that goes through. I've seized these strands so that I can get my hands out of the way. Well, now we have to move the knot down to our seizing on the rope. To tie the Mathew Walker, the first step will be to unwind our rope in a prepared fashion, the same as when we did our splicing. When we tie the knot in the 3-strand, we want to make sure we do as little damage to the strands as we can, because we're going to have to reassemble the rope, twist it back together, and so we'd like to keep our strands with the memory that they had prior to unwinding the rope. First step is to tie the walnut with the lay, in other words, counterclockwise. First we'll tie our walnut, we'll tie it with the lay, counterclockwise. Maybe crank up the tension a little bit in our strands as you do that. Then our next step is to make the second tuck. Tucking to the inside so that all 3 strands come up at the center. And then we can melt the knot down to our seizing. Meow! Cat wants in on it. There, we've got her down pretty good against the seating. We'll tighten it up good. Now we can relay our rope, put a little spring back into our strands as we do it. Now we can take our seizing off. And there's the Mathew Walker knot.